My name is Termination, and this is my senior comprehensive exam. Um, Introduction. My internship was done at Penn Philadelphia Integrated Hospitality Network. It is a shelter-based nonprofit organization. The agency has been around since 1991 in the Germantown area of Philadelphia. They recently expanded to Northeast Philadelphia in 2012. Penn house an entire family, not just mother and children. The agency provides counseling, assistance with rent, transitional and permanent housing, financial assistance, diapers, tokens, transpass, and more. Our families are housed in churches and synagogue. My client is a 36-year-old Black Puerto Rican female, mother of two. She recently entered into our program at Penn. She has been having problems maintaining part-time and full-time jobs because of her depression. She has a long family history of mental and sexual abuse growing up into her adult life. Her mother has been on drugs all her life, and her father was killed when she was the age of 9. She has been in a mental hospital and counseling, but she does not follow through with counseling. She has a sister whom she's very close with, and she is the only person she seems to trust other than her children in her life. She's very protective of her children, and she's a very good mother to what I've seen. The skill that we use is engagement. Engagement is the first interaction between the social worker and the client. It is very important that the social worker set a tone that will allow the client to engage with her. The ability to be able to build up a level of trust is very important because it will be the determining factor in the outcome of the meeting. Assessment. Assessment is when the social worker review the client's chart information and come up with a care plan for her client. This information is reviewed with the client to make sure that both the client and social worker is on the same page. Sometimes information can be missing. This is why it's important that the social worker repeat what was said during the meeting and go over the client's chart again with her or him. This will make sure that the needs of the client is met and is being taken seriously. Planning. The social worker will develop an intervention plan of care for her client, attainable goals that will be set for the client to do. Those goals will be agreed upon by the social worker and the client. The social worker will give a time frame in which the client should complete the goal. The social worker may also have a list of her own goals that she needs to complete and gather information for her client before their next meeting. Intervention. This is a policy or procedure put in place to help the client. With some of the stuff will be attainable goals that the client would need to do in order for her to move forward to the next step. These are if the client is unable to complete the task or becomes unwilling to complete the task, the social worker will have to meet with the client before the next meeting. Follow up. The social worker will follow up with the client to ensure that tasks are being completed. If more time is needed by the client, the social worker will give additional time depending on the client's situation and the system. Evaluation. Evaluation is done by the social worker to see if the care plan is working or not. This can be done by face-to-face meeting, phone interview, or questionnaire. The social worker will know if the intervention is working and put in place or there will be changes that need to be made. Termination. Termination is when the social worker agency and the agency part from their client, the relationship has ended. In my agency, this will be when the client moved from permanent housing into from transitional housing to is when our client moved from is when our clients move into permanent housing and they're no longer in the shelter-based system. Engagement. My first interaction with my client became I use an icebreaker skill. Those are skills of engagement. I was dinner host and I was with the guests at Penn. That night, I gave my guests the opportunity to choose what they wanted to eat for dinner because I believe it was important. They are always being given dinner in which they have no say. The dinner host usually prepare dinner and take for the client and they that they prepared. It was told by myself that by my soon-to-be client that it would be nice to be able for them to pick what they wanted to eat for dinner as a group. I also use active listening, another skill used with my client. I listened to the concern of the client and I was able to give her feedback on things she expressed to me that was important to her and her children. Together, we came up with an attainable task for her to do before the next meeting. Assessment. On a micro level, my client is severely depressed. It is very important that she receive personal therapy. She has no desire to do anything. She stated that she would like to be independent and take care of her kids. Her action does not match what she says or what she wants. I do strongly believe that her inability to be motivated is because of her long history of abuse. Her mother is in and has been on drugs all her life. Her father was killed when she was 9, and she's abused. She's been abused from her childhood into her adult life. Her going to therapy weekly will help her to address her depression. She has skills to be able to get full-time job employment and take care, but she lacks the drive. On a meso level, she came from a background of neglect and abuse. The system that I would use to describe my client is the ecosystem. The world in which she lived in and was never positive. Her ability to function with individual group therapy is an issue. I do believe that she will benefit from group therapy. Also, would help her because she would know that she's not alone. She, however, needs to start with individual therapy and transition into group therapy. Her children is her strength. She's a wonderful mother. She's very attentive to her children. Um, Her children are well kept. She's very organized, and when it comes to taking care of her children and her home. Planet. My client did, as I said, my client expressed that she would like to be able to provide for her children. She wants to work, but she cannot find anything, any job. This list, the steps below are the intervention my supervisor and myself came up with to help my client attain her goals. The care plan that was put in place for her is weekly therapy session to start, weekly meeting once per week with myself and follow up with my supervisor. She has to update her resume and she has to apply for 2 jobs per week. Evaluation. This is the beginning phase of my meeting with my client and putting in place a care plan. My client has a long history of abuse. She expressed she would like to have a home for her children. She will need to have extensive therapy in order to have a normal life. She is capable of making decent life for herself and her children, but she has to go into therapy and stick with it. She is a wonderful mother, as I stated several times before from my observation with her children at dinner and my overnight stay with our guests. She can become the person she stated she wants to be if she could be more motivated and invest in herself. Termination. My organization, as I mentioned before, is a shelter-based organization, nonprofit. Termination with my client will be only when the client is able to get permanent housing or transition into and go into transition housing and permanent housing. She will need to continue therapy while she's in the shelter and in the program. Once she's out of the program, she'll become an alumni and she'll still be able to receive help if needed and assistance with everything else beside housing. My client was approved shortly, I think about 2 weeks after our first initial meeting, for supportive housing for a year. After the year is up, she would need to be able to maintain her rent and her utilities. So it is very critical that she stays in therapy and follows through in order to help her with her depression, so she'll be able to hold a job and maintain housing as she moves forward in her life. Thank you. And my references.